Script and script writing is a subject all on its own. What I will say though is this: when planning a shoot, even if your subject matter is so obscure, might be the wrong word, but unknown to you. In other words, you're going out and you're capturing whatever you might see. It's still a really nice idea to have a shot list. Call it a script, call it a shot list. What that means is that when you're actually writing the shot list, you're actually thinking about the story that you're going to tell. You see, it's like if you're just going out to get footage, then you won't actually know what to shoot when you're out there, because you won't have a story in the back of your head. And if you do have a story in the back of your head, there are so many things that you won't think of on the day while you're filming, and when you're sitting in your editing room or your lounge or your whatever, and you're thinking about the project and you're thinking about the story, you will think of many things that you won't think of while you're filming. So how about combine the two? So what I do is this: I shoot mostly off the cuff. I'll have a trip planned, I'll have some stories to tell along the way, and I will write very broad shot lists. For example, if I go to a particular historic site, don't forget to get a shot of the statue, of the graves, of if there's anything of high detail, high significance to the story, put it in a shot list, because often you'll be shooting and you'll say, let's have a refresher. You'll get something to eat, you'll get yourself soda, and you'll be looking at your script and you'll be saying, oh right, yeah, okay, and it'll suddenly start generating new thoughts. If you are shooting a story that is, well, for example, a documentary which is fairly well scripted, you kind of know what you need to get to tell the story, then a shot list is absolutely necessary. Then it's that time that you actually need to go in more detail when sitting in your editing room or production office, where you're actually sitting down saying, okay, what is the story? Now, let's go forward a little bit and answer the question, what is the story? You need to have an answer to that in terms of what do you want to communicate to your audience. You may have an agenda. Whatever it happens to be. If it's a political thing, you might have an agenda to present some facts in a particular way. Knowing what that is going to affect the shots that you're going to get, and going to affect the questions you are going to ask those people you're interviewing. So having a clear idea of the story you're going to present to begin with is very important. When those extra ideas come in as you're filming, as you're on the phone organizing things, as you meet other people, as you get more excited about the project, and as it grows and builds because you start gathering information and gathering footage, be flexible. Be very flexible. Be completely open to saying, no, yes, we decided to do that, but this is good also, we're going to do this too. Or actually, you know, this is better than what we first had in mind, because. Revise the shot list, revise the script, be flexible. But having that thought process behind you when going to shoot, and be prepared for a new set of thought processes while you're shooting and post-shoot, will help enormously in capturing and gathering the footage you need to tell your story. It's a short one on script writing. It is, as I said, a subject all on its own. These are the techniques I use, and I think they're very valuable. Be careful of not becoming too clever with your storytelling. To me, it is of utmost importance that the viewer is not aware of the camera you're using, the lenses you're using, the fact that the camera is moving, tracking. All of these things should not be obvious to the audience, because the moment the audience is, it's the equivalent of an actor in the middle of the scene looking and focusing on the camera lens. You'd never see that, would you? Because immediately that happens with a scene. Unless it's a wall break, the moment the eye of the subject focuses on the camera, it places an object that is out of the sphere of the story, and it puts it into the story. What is that person looking at? Looking at the audience. I'm looking directly down the camera lens now because I'm speaking to you directly. If in a scene where if you had somebody suddenly look into a camera, it would, you know what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? So the equivalent would be if you, for example, had a drone shot that screamed, "How clever am I at this drone flying?" Immediately it takes away from the story and it detracts from it. And one should really avoid that kind of thing. Let's talk a little bit about music. In the same way, if the music is there for the wrong reason and it draws attention to itself, it's doing exactly the same thing as a camera that tracks. Let's talk about a camera track and then we'll come back to the music. If you had, for example, your subject and the camera is tracking around it, okay, that's quite nice, isn't it? Because it gives a feel. Does it give a professional feel? Yeah. Is that professional feel what you're looking for? Shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. What you're looking for example, if you had a subject and you had a camera tracking around it, is to give additional information to the audience to help the story. In other words, put the character in a situation which will help the story. If the camera move is there just because it would be nice to move the camera, then I would very much suggest don't move the camera. Because the background then, if it is not relative and adding to the story, then detracts from the story. It actually takes the audience away from the story. And that's the last thing you want to do. So let's get back to the music. If you were using a piece of music that was show-offy, a bit too clever, if the editing was a little bit too, it's easy to, for example, if you were filming something that was sensitive, there's an emotional attachment between two people and the story has a sensitivity in it, to blow it completely with a piece of music, with a soundtrack, or with a piece of information in the frame that was not relevant to the mood, setting, and story. So it's very, very important not to be trying to be too clever. Don't try and be clever, because it's the easiest way to detract from the story. What's wrong with just a person doing a beautiful performance? Isn't that more important than the camera move or the angle? So angles should have a reason. Moves should have a reason. All of these things should have a reason. And if they don't have a reason, they're probably as a result of somebody in the creative side saying, wouldn't that be nice? As opposed to build the story, maybe we should add this. Always, to build the story, we should do this. So preempt all of your discussions with what you're going to do and how you're going to film it to help the story. Let's try this. I've been enjoying a lot of these masterclass courses, and the one so far that I've enjoyed the most is Hans Zimmer talking about music and composing, and he used a beautiful phrase that I want to share with you. He said, always keep the laboratory door open. Don't be scared of trying things. But there's a caveat to that. If in the final picture, you're looking through the viewfinder, you're looking through the rushes, you're looking through the edit, you realize that there's something in the frame that looks good, okay, but does not add to the story, specifically add to the story, then be brave and take it out. Let's talk about editing. Firstly, how does it work? You shoot with your camera, the data goes onto a memory card that looks a bit like this. You take it out of your camera, or you can plug your camera in. Those are two ways of doing it. Plugging the camera directly into the computer so that the computer can see them. This is the software here, and I'm going to get rid of it. So that's my desktop, and I have put this is an Apple operating system. If you're with Windows, don't worry about it. Windows is perfect. There's nothing wrong with it at all. This software that I'm going to show you now works both on Apple and Windows. So don't think you need to rush off and change. In fact, I'd say it's a bad idea that you rush off and change your operating system, because that's a whole new set of things that you have to learn. I would say don't do it. Stick with what you've got. Your computer is now going to read the files on this disk. So I'm going to put that in there. Now you are going to need to find out for yourself how to access the images on the camera card. I cannot tell you how to do that because every computer is slightly different. But because you've got basic PC knowledge, you will know that you will need to click it. And there, in this particular case, it's a Sony camera, and my video files are all the way down there. Those are my video files. Okay. I can now either drag and drop them, or I can import them using my editing software. Now, this bit is very important for editing. Okay. You need to have some kind of disk drive, something like this, with USB 3 is fast enough for HD video. Something like this is that's powered by the computer. This is powered by a separate, you have to plug this into the wall. This is a 3 terabyte, I think, doesn't really matter the size. USB 3, which is the fairly new, they call it a USB, is a universal serial bus. You don't need to remember that. But anyway, that's what you're looking for, USB 3.0. So if you're buying any of these disks, drives, look for USB 3. Anything from that or faster will work very well, perfectly well with HD video. Now, when you've plugged your your hard drive into your computer, it will appear, in terms of an Apple, it'll appear on your desktop. Windows is a little bit different. You're going to need to understand how to access it. And there it is there. So I have made a folder for this project. In fact, what I'm working on now is actually this series of videos that I'm making for this course. All right. So I've called it Video for Beginners, Rushes. Rushes is an old-fashioned expression where they would print on negative and then they would do a rush print. So we can now look at them, and that name is kind of stuck, Rushes. I would then take my data that's on my camera card, recorded with my camera, and I would move it physically into the folder that I'm using as my folder for my project, for my video project. Now, this is important. Everything should go into that folder. When I say everything, I write it in big capital letters and I underlined it. If you've got a music track, put it in there. Your computer will ask you if you want to access it from your music library. You can do that if you want to. You can access using your video software, editing software. to access still images from your still picture library. It'll allow you to do that. I don't think that's a great idea, but it does work. And the reason why I always put it as a separate folder is because later on, in a year's time, I want to know where that piece of footage is, or where that still photograph is, or where's that whatever is. I've got it all in one folder. The video software and the way it works is, I'm now going to open it. It's a piece of video software called DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve is a professional video editing software, and it is free. So if you're just starting out, you're just starting editing, go to the addresses in the description of this video. DaVinci, Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve 14 is the latest version. Download it. It is free. It is exceptionally good. And when I say good, I mean very good. I think it's one of the best operating software on the market today. It does everything well. It does colorizing, it does color grading, it does audio editing, it does delivery of your final. It's all in one great package, and unbelievably, it's free. That's what I'm going to teach you now. So what I've got here is I'm ready to start editing. All right. I have to tell the software where to find the media. So that's the word. On a camera card, it's called media. That's the word. Your audio is media. Your music is media. Your pictures, still picture. Every component of your video is called media. So these are sometimes called media drives. It's one word used for them. Okay, it's where you stack your media. Okay, you can use the hard drive on your computer. If it's big enough, you can use that too. But here's the secret. If I put everything in one folder, then later on, if I want to open a project, I know that everything is in that folder and the computer will be able to find everything. In other words, what I'm going to do now is, if you watch here, I'm going to tell this now to import those shots. I go Apple I, which is a shortcut. It's also in the menu up top if you want to use the menu, and I tell it to find it. So I'll go there, video for beginners, and those are my two shots, in fact 3 shots that I want to import. What I'm now doing is I'm telling the software, go and get those files, but it doesn't physically get them and move them like I'm doing with my soft beverage. What it says is, it says to the software, that piece of footage is over there. So when you need it, you'll know where to go and find it. It doesn't actually move it around at all. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to click open. It now appears there. All right. If I now move that somewhere else, I put it in that folder, or if I put it somewhere else, this piece of software suddenly won't be able to find it anymore. And can you see these two here? That is this piece of software's way of saying, I can't find you. You've got to be somewhere. I'm not going to remove you. You still see, because what the software actually does is it says, find that media file. It's over there. Okay. And so when I assemble and edit, I can take this shot and move it into my timeline. What basically that has told the piece of software to do is go and find that media file. I'm going to do a little cut here. I'm going to use a B for blade. I'm going to grab it using A for arrow, and I'm going to move it. Okay, very simple. I'm making it smaller by pressing Apple minus. I've told it in this is called a timeline. Okay, I have told the timeline to find that shot, begin at that frame, run it until that frame, and then stop it. And I've removed that. I'm not even looking at my edit mode. I'm just explaining the fundamentals of assembling shots in a timeline. We will get to the details of why you would cut, how to compile. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. This is the basics. Now this shot here, I can put that in there. It hasn't removed it, but because it's gone red, it's saying, I don't know where the original media file is. So that's why it's important to keep everything in a folder and know where it is. So you know where it is, the computer knows where it is. Okay, it's pretty important stuff. All right. Now, what this piece of, let's find another one that is actually. So what this basically is, I'm telling the computer to run this shot until that frame, and then start a new shot and run it from that frame. And as it's telling it to do that, the software isn't doing anything with the media files. It's not compiling them. It's not creating a linear flow. It's not creating a whole lot of shots, one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. What it's simply doing is show this shot from frame, whatever that frame is, to whatever frame that is, then start on that frame, whatever frame that is, and run it for. And this can get incredibly complex. You can add sound effects, you can add music, you can add in titles and all kinds of things. And so what this does, it doesn't compile anything at this stage. It's just a series of instructions on what to do with the media files. Later we'll get onto this little button here, which is called Deliver. Then what this particular software does is says, okay, now I'm going to start moving things around. It doesn't physically move the camera files around on the hard drive. It creates a brand new file compiling all of the shots in the edits, in the timeline. All of the shots, all of the titles, all of the sound effects, everything. It makes one file, combining and mixing everything into one. Okay, that's sometimes called rendering. It's basically giving all of those instructions that you've created here that you can watch in real time, okay, and compiling them into one file. And that one file is the file that is then uploaded to your final media, sent to a broadcaster, uploaded on YouTube, uploaded on video, shared with your friends. All right, that's the start. The editing side of making films, to me, is as much fun, if not more fun, than filming, because here is where you actually start to see the final product. A brief word on editing software. I use a product called DaVinci Resolve. It's made by a company called Blackmagic, and it is, the best part about it is it's free. Now, it might seem amazing that such a good piece of software should be free, and I agree, it is amazing. There is quite a bit of free editing software out there, and most of it is absolute rubbish. But this one is very, very good, even though it's free. Let me put it this way. When selecting a piece of software to edit, you're going to need it to be able to enable you to assemble multi-layered audio tracks. Now, a lot of free, cheap software won't allow that because it's meant for amateurs. It's not meant for professionals. So the one thing that you're going to have to do is to use multi-layers, multiple layers. And if you look here on the screen, this is what's called the timeline. Those are my images. And here, if I look here, you'll see this is my soundtrack in green here. And you can see multiple layers. That's adding voice soundtrack, music, sound effects, making a full and rich audio mix. Absolutely essential to storytelling. So that's the first question you need to ask when looking at software. Secondly, of course, you're going to need to know if it's compatible with your machine. 10 years ago, Apple was quite far ahead of Windows when it comes to software and editing. That's not the case anymore. The Windows machines are every bit as good as the Apple machines. It doesn't matter. Most software is suitable for both. Let's go through a few of the softwares that are available. iMovie, which has come standard with Apple computers, is surprisingly good, and it's free. I personally don't like the creative interface, but it works. It's easy to use, and if you're used to iTunes, iMovie, and you want to take it to the professional level, you will go Final Cut Pro, which is basically a professional version of iTunes. What others? Pinnacle, don't know much about it. I believe it's quite good. Windows only. Adobe Premiere, I find, is quite a good piece of software, but Adobe keep updating the software, and every year you have to learn a whole lot of new things. I found it very, very frustrating and used it for about 3 years and then stopped, then moved to DaVinci Pro and used the free version for a whole year before I realized that the paid version would actually be worth it because it had some features that I then wanted to use. And the great part about DaVinci is once you've bought Resolve, that's it. You've purchased it. You don't have to keep spending money every month like you do with most of the Adobe products. The link to to Resolve is in the description of this video. Have a look at it and really just download it and have a look and see if you can, if you like it. It has some wonderful features and that I use now completely, and I'm completely satisfied with it. And as I said before, the great part about it is that even the free version is fantastic, and most people won't actually need any more than that.